On the night of August 2nd, 2006, 32-year-old attorney Robert Eric Wone was murdered under bizarre and deeply unsettling circumstances in a Washington, D.C. townhouse. Despite the presence of three adults in the home and a tightly controlled timeline, no one has ever been held accountable for the killing. Who was Robert Wone? Robert Wone was a bright, dedicated, and deeply respected man. A second-generation Chinese American, he grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and was known for his integrity, intelligence, and service to his community. He graduated from the College of William and Mary in 1996 and earned his law degree from the University of Pennsylvania in 1999. Professionally, Robert had worked for the prestigious law firm Covington and Burling, where he focused on commercial litigation. In 2006, just months before his death, he took a new job as general counsel for Radio Free Asia, which was a government-funded nonprofit that broadcasts news to countries where freedom of information is restricted. He had also recently celebrated his third wedding anniversary with his wife, Catherine Yu. Robert was meticulous, careful, and not known for taking unnecessary risks. He didn't drink heavily, use drugs, or lead a double life. His schedule was predictable, and his friends described him as the last person anyone would expect to wind up the victim of foul play. The night of the murder, on the night of his death, Robert had planned to attend a legal seminar in D.C. and had decided to stay over at the home of his college friend Joseph Price, rather than return to the Oakton, Virginia, home he shared with his wife. The decision was practical. Robert was working late and wanted to avoid a long commute. Price lived in a well-kept townhouse on Swan Street Northwest in the DuPont Circle neighborhood of Washington, D.C. He shared the three-story home with his domestic partner, Victor Zaborski, and another man, Dylan Ward, who was also romantically involved with Price in a polyamorous relationship. Robert arrived at the house around 10:30 p.m. Roughly 79 minutes later, Zaborski called 911, reporting that their guest had been stabbed. Emergency services arrived within minutes. They found Robert Wone lying on a pull-out sofa bed in a guest room on the second floor. He had been stabbed 3 times in the chest with a single-edged knife, consistent with a chef's knife later found placed neatly on the nightstand. Despite the severity of the wounds, the scene was oddly clean. There was little to no blood spatter, which police found extremely suspicious. Paramedics noted that the blood had already begun to settle and dry, suggesting that the 911 call may have been delayed. One of the paramedics remarked that the scene felt staged. Initial statements and inconsistencies. The 3 men told investigators that they had heard a noise shortly after going to bed and discovered an intruder had entered the home, stabbed Robert, and fled. They claimed they had not heard or seen anything else suspicious and had no idea why Robert would have been targeted. However, investigators quickly grew skeptical of this version of events. There was no sign of forced entry. The rear security gate was locked, and no windows were broken. The murder weapon appeared to have come from the kitchen. The victim was found in neatly arranged clothing and had no defensive wounds. A second knife found on the property was later believed to be a planted red herring. Forensic evidence suggested that Robert had been incapacitated, possibly with a paralytic agent such as escopolamine or ketamine, although toxicology reports did not find traceable levels. Notably, DC's medical examiner noted that the stab wounds were clean and precise, indicating the attacker likely had medical or anatomical knowledge. Worse still, the autopsy found signs suggesting possible sexual assault, including puncture wounds in the neck, chest, and foot, and anal trauma. But a rape kit was inconclusive, and because the body had apparently been cleaned, much potential forensic evidence was lost. The investigation. Despite intense scrutiny, no one was charged with Robert Wone's murder. Instead, 3 years later in 2008, Price, Zaborski, and Ward were indicted on charges of obstruction of justice, conspiracy, and tampering with evidence. Prosecutors alleged that the men had deliberately cleaned up the crime scene, manipulated evidence, and provided misleading statements to derail the investigation. The 2010 trial was highly publicized. The prosecution argued that the 3 men's stories didn't match, and the timeline was inconsistent with the condition of the body and the scene. They pointed to emails and books found in Ward's room related to sadomasochism, restraint, and paralysis. Police also seized a large collection of BDM equipment, which added to public speculation about what had happened that night. Despite the circumstantial case and mounting suspicion, Judge Lynn Leibovitz ruled that there was insufficient evidence to convict the men beyond a reasonable doubt. She emphasized that while the defendant's behavior was suspicious, even strange, the burden of proof had not been met. All three were acquitted of the charges. Civil lawsuit and settlement. In 2008, Catherine Wone Roberts' widow filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Price, Zaborski, and Ward. The lawsuit alleged that the men had either directly participated in or had knowledge of Roberts' murder and failed to render aid. It sought damages for emotional distress, loss of companionship, and pain and suffering. The lawsuit was settled out of court in 2011 for an undisclosed amount. Though it did not provide legal resolution to the crime itself, it reinforced the family's belief that the men in the house that night were not being truthful. Unanswered questions and lingering theories. The Robert Wone case continues to baffle both the public and investigators. Several theories circulate. Drug-facilitated assault gone wrong. Some believe Robert was drugged, possibly involuntarily, by someone in the house, and the stabbing was a panicked response to his condition or awakening. BDSM ritual or experimentation. Due to the presence of restraints and relevant literature in the house, others suspect a scenario involving consensual or non-consensual sexual experimentation. Cover-up of an outsider. Some believe that an unknown intruder was involved, although the evidence overwhelmingly contradicts this. Robert walked into a trap. A darker theory suggests Robert may have been lured to the house under false pretenses. Still, without new forensic evidence or a confession, all remain speculative. In 2023, Peacock released the two-part docuseries Who Killed Robert Wone. The series interviewed friends, journalists, legal experts, and even former investigators. It reignited public interest and renewed calls for justice. Current status. As of today, the murder of Robert Wone remains unsolved. The three men Price, Zaborski, and Ward have since moved on with their lives. Authorities have left the case open, though no new suspects or developments have been announced publicly. Robert's widow, Catherine, continues to grieve privately, having largely withdrawn from the public eye after the civil case concluded. Friends and advocates continue to push for the case to be re-examined with modern forensic techniques. Robert Wone's murder is chilling not only for its brutality but for the calculated silence that seems to surround it. With a locked house, no sign of forced entry, and a body cleaned of clues. The case is haunting. If you have any information regarding the murder of Robert Wone, contact the D.C. Metropolitan Police at 202-727-9099 or submit an anonymous tip by texting 50411.